Why do founders, or many founders, struggle in the realms of relationship?
Simply, there's a lack of education how to create a healthy relationship. Building the company takes a lot of the mental capacity. It's a high stress environment. It comes with all sorts of challenges, and these things are brought home, and with that are also brought into the relationship. The way they show up in business is very similar to the way they show up in their relationship.
When a man doesn't even know himself anymore, it will be very difficult as well to relate to the other person in front of them because he can't actually tune to the person.
The moment something feels off or someone feels disconnected or we both feel disconnected, just say it. Now let's look at it. Where did we lose connection? What happened? What is it? And we figure it out together.
We will unconsciously attract partners into our lives with some of the best and worst traits of both of our caregivers. And the very strategies that we learned as children are the ones that we will then unconsciously project out to our partners. How would you like to do a relationship? How would you like to do conflict in a relationship? How would you like to do intimacy in a relationship? How would you like to communicate in a relationship?
This is a totally underestimated, underrated, most people not know about skill that I believe can be a real superpower as a founder.
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. How can founders and high performers lead their relationships with the same clarity and intention they bring to their businesses, and create partnerships that feel connected, alive, and deeply meaningful? Welcome back to the Founder Series, a 6-part journey supporting founders, business professionals, and high-performing men who want to evolve from high-functioning stress into embodied and integrated leadership, a form of leadership that allows you to stay clear and calm under pressure by aligning who you are with how you lead. In this episode, we explore a subject where the rubber truly meets the road for so many founders I work with. Men who lead teams, inspire others, and move entire organizations forward, yet quietly struggle to create the depth and satisfaction they long for in their romantic relationships. The truth is, most of us have never learned the skills, tools, or principles needed to thrive in a relationship. And for founders especially, the very traits that drive success in business are often the same traits that limit us in love, intimacy, and honest relating. At the same time, our earliest imprints of love shape how we relate as adults, often unconsciously. Without realizing it, we rely on the same strategies that once kept us safe, the patterns that earned us connection, approval, or belonging growing up. And over time, these strategies begin to recreate the very challenges we faced in childhood. Eventually, this leads to a breakdown of safety and trust. The spark fades, intimacy becomes inconsistent, communication turns surface level, and many founders discover how this bleeds into their work, their clarity, their presence, and their ability to lead. In this conversation, Bjoern and I explore what keeps founders stuck in love and intimacy. We look at how most of us were never taught how to do a relationship well, even though we carry layers of conditioning from our parents, media, culture, and past experiences. To begin, we offer questions and principles that help men step into their relationships with more intention, clarity, and awareness. We explore 4 key pillars that, in our view, make relationships work: how to create emotional depth and closeness, how to navigate conflict in a way that brings partners closer rather than further apart, how to reignite polarity when the spark has faded, and how to build a partnership that supports both people in their individual growth journeys. At its core, this episode offers a roadmap for founders and high-performing men to lead with authenticity, steadiness, and heart, to show up in heated moments without collapsing, to listen without losing themselves, and to offer direction while honoring their partner's experience, to become a man whose presence creates safety, intimacy, and connection in romantic relating and in every area of life. If you're a man who's developed himself professionally, yet struggles in relationship, and you long to feel more rooted, open, and present in love and intimacy, I trust that this episode will meet you where you are. All right, Bjoern, I'm excited for this upcoming conversation. Arguably, this was the one that I was most looking forward to in this Founder Series, because we're going to really go into the subject matter of relationships. And what I really want to explore with you is, first of all, why do founders, or many founders, let's just say, struggle in the realms of relationship? But also, I would love to offer them some pointers in terms of, first of all, educating them how to do relationship well and guide them in some directions that would offer them, let's just say, some um, points towards where they can start. And I would also say, with the combination between the two of us, that there's going to be some really impactful things that will emerge, considering that we both have our different strengths. So yeah, very much looking forward to this upcoming conversation here with you.
Same here, man.
I guess to create the stage for this conversation, I really want to consider and explore with you, based on your experiences as a founder, building a company, some of the struggles that you had observed in your own marriage, but also within some of the founders that you have been in close contact with, or maybe have connected with since your time there. What have you observed as some of the struggles that occur for them in a relationship? And what would you also say is the deeper reason for those struggles?
What I would say is that while I see founders struggle with relationship, I would say it's not necessarily founder specific struggles. The reason why there is struggle is that, from my point of view, we let's say overall, like as a society, referencing the Western society, we're not really great at relationships, to be honest. And for me, it comes down to a lack of education and a lack of role models around how a healthy relationship can look like, and a missing depth of spiritual teachings. They're going to come to that, or we're going to come to that later, I guess. So I'm not going to do much detail here, but yeah, simply there's a lack of education how to create a healthy relationship, right? And then, while I think that specifically shows up for founders, is because they've chosen a lifestyle where building the company takes a lot of the mental capacity, and it takes more than, let's say, in an average job. And without saying that, like, an average 9-to-5 job is like not valuable or anything, but founders choose a lifestyle where, like, their profession takes a lot of space, and with that, there's even less space to feel into and explore, like, how does a healthy relationship actually look like for me, right? Plus, building a company comes with all sorts of, it's a high stress environment. It comes with all sorts of challenges, and these things are brought home, and with that are also brought into the relationship, right? So there is even, let's say, in that environment, a higher chance for two people coming together at the end of a work day, where one of them is energy depleted, stressed out, and with their head probably still thinking about the business while meeting their partner. So it's, let's say, challenging circumstances in which the partners meet with the same lack of education and understanding that most people share, I would say.
Yeah, no, I think this is a beautiful jumping start-off point here for this conversation. And when I had as well premeditated on the reason why there might be struggles, because I would as well say, when a client comes to me or a founder comes to me, we will often address intimacy or relational issues. So I pondered on that. Why is that the case? And lack of education was definitely a big one. And, I agree with the fact that you had mentioned that this isn't solely the case with founders, but this is actually a collective challenge in the West. But there is also something to say about the choice of occupation, and as a consequence as well, the stress that comes with that, and also what we value as founders, and how so much of our, I guess, day-to-day is driven towards performance. And considering as well that the more that we actually practice that, the more it becomes an embodied way of how we move through life. And within the other conversations as well that we've had in this series, we've also explored how over time this leads to a continued disconnection and separation from who they truly are.
Agree.
And so I think this is also, last point here, this is where I see some of the biggest challenges occurring when a man doesn't even know himself anymore, when he's completely blind to what is occurring in him. His sensory system that communicates to him when something is occurring, not just in him, but also the person in front of him. When he's completely blind to that, it will be very difficult as well to relate to the other person in front of them because he can't actually attune to the person.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel himself, so he can't actually feel the other person.
Yeah, fully agree. And I think a lot has to do with the lack of capacity. So if I, let's say, burned all of my capacity in my job during the day, it will be more challenging for me to be attuned to my partner at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then without having the right practices and knowledge around how to actually bring myself back into a state where I can be attuned, that is then extra challenging. What I find fascinating is that when I'm observing founders, it's even more clear within them that the way they show up in business is very similar to the way they show up in their relationship. And I think it's just the intensity of creating a company that even more clearly reveals like what are the patterns that are at play.
Could you make that more tangible? Like, how would that as well reflect itself in the relationship?
Okay, so a very simple example could be to, let's say I have a certain need, a need for intimacy, right? Then now there are two ways I could very clearly like feel into that need and be able to articulate it very clearly and like bring it to my partner in like very compassionate, loving way, but also speaking clearly to what I need. Or I can go into manipulation. If I am and if I'm building a company in a certain way, manipulating is also rewarded. It's a technique that works. Now, if I spend, let's say, 12 hours a day using manipulation as a way to get my needs met to build my business, very likely I'm going to do that at home as well. And that's important for me to say. I don't want to first of all, I'm definitely guilty of that in the past. And second, it's like not to blame anyone that does that. And there are way more skillful ways on like how to get my needs met. So, but the thing is like someone who does that is in the company, very likely going to do the same at home. So that's why I say like the looking at a way or observing how someone approaches their entrepreneurial path, very likely similar patterns will show up in the relationship.
And I love the example that you just used because I think it's a perfect example just to reference and to consider, because if we got to just acknowledge the consequences that come with that. We can choose to enact that behavior, but it will come with, I'm going to say, severe consequences in the recognition that we're not trying to actually meet our needs with our partners in connection with them, but actually through our partners, right? Yeah. So there is almost this objectification of the partner. There's a dehumanization of the partner. And even if the partner doesn't consciously acknowledge it, they'll feel it. There's something in their nervous system that will register something about this didn't really feel right, And if the other person agrees to doing that, usually it's going to be out of fear of perhaps losing the other person or perhaps even creating conflict or tension if they were not to meet that need. So there is something about that engagement that is non-consensual, which will naturally take away from the safety, the trust, but also the intimacy that one can experience in relationship.
Yeah, fully agree.
So another thing that, dawned as well on me is it is true that we are not actually receiving direct education on relationships, but that is not to say that we don't receive an education on relationships. We do. And where I see that education, of course, showing up is in our first imprints of love. It is in our first imprints of connection. Initially, it's going to be through our caregivers, right? Where we receive our first imprints of attachment and first imprints of love. And there is going to be that fine play, especially as children. I always love to reference Gabor Mate in this because he just phrased this so beautifully. It's this dance between attachment and authenticity. And as children, we will sacrifice our authenticity towards attachment. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, we don't actually, first of all, become consciously clear of the fact that we're doing that. And usually we continue acting out the very things that we learned during that time in order to stay in connection with our partners. So the way that this could show up is withholding our truth.
Yeah.
Or getting into a temper tantrum as soon as our needs are not gonna get met, right? Or maybe fuck off.
Yeah.
Because we feel upset, and that was a way for our parent to come back and apologize, perhaps, right? Yeah. There's all kinds of different ways of how this can show up. And the very strategies that we learned as children to ascertain a level of safety, a level of approval, a level of validation, a level of love are the ones that we will then unconsciously project out to our partners. And then the other thing I might as well want to just add is that there's going to be all these cultural references about love, about romance, about marriage, about how to do relationship. We've received it through songs, through media, through Hollywood, through movies, through our friends. And so there is an education that we've received, but I think if we don't actually do the deliberate work on our relationships and get clear on how we want to do relationships, a lot of that will be unconsciously acted out.
Yeah, this and plus the the relationship our parents had, which gives
That's
us
another big
gives
factor.
us an idea. And I mean, I can only speak from my experience, but like they had a relationship that's definitely not a relationship that I want to have. It's like quite the opposite.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, where I would like us to begin. So to offer maybe just a bit of a framework for all the listeners who are checking in, I considered 4 pillars that I would like to explore one by one here with you, based on one of our teachers that has as well supported us individually on our paths, John Wineland. But I guess the place where I'd really like us to begin, where we'd already shared some ideas, is how we can actually intentionally come together in a relationship. And one of the things I pondered on that was actually very insightful for me and was very impactful when I first discovered is that when we come in a relationship together, let's say me with another person, we will form a third entity, which is going to be the relationship. And the way we can kind of see this is that we all come together with our attachment wounds, our history, our fears, our dreams, our expectations, our communication, the way we do conflict. We do that separately, and then we come together, which creates this shared field, this shared understanding of how we're going to do conflict, how we're going to do intimacy, how we're going to communicate, and all kinds of other ways of how this can show up. And I think a lot of individuals, we actually miss the fact that this occurs. And as a result, we don't actually nurture to that. And there is something that I found to be very impactful about seeing this and inquiring how we can continuously nurture that third entity, similar to the way that we would nurture a garden. Perhaps asking ourselves, what does that garden of our relationship need? What does it really require in order to flourish? What do we need to protect that garden from? What do we need to keep it safe from? And so this is the initial understanding that I just want to bring in, but also having intentional conversations with oneself around what are some of the more important needs that I want to have met in relationship. Yesterday, I hope you don't mind me bringing this in, but yesterday we had dinner and you had reflected to me very clearly one of the reasons why you had chosen your current partner. And it was very clear that there was certain needs that she was meeting that you were not getting met anywhere else. And that was something that was really meaningful for you.
Yeah.
And what was so beautiful is that you were so clear about that need. But the question is, are most individuals so clear about what is it that they want to get met in a romantic relationship? As Bjoern and I recorded this founder series, one thing became clear. Founders and high-performing men are hungry for a place where they can speak honestly, develop emotional leadership, and be supported by people who understand the pressures they live with. With that in mind, we're opening a small and intimate cohort beginning February 2026 for founders, business professionals, and leaders who want to apply the principles we explore in the series to their lives so they can lead with clarity, emotional steadiness, and integrity, even in high-pressure situations. Now, this is not a large program. It is a focused space where members receive personal mentorship from both of us. Bjoern brings more than 15 years of entrepreneurial experience, investing and advising founders, grounded in years of Zen meditation. My background in embodied coaching, somatic work, and teaching over the past decade helps men reconnect to themselves, regulate under pressure, and lead from a grounded and aligned place. When we tested this approach with a group of founders in Berlin, the response was clear. Men felt supported not just in their business challenges, but in their relationships, emotional life, and inner world. Each month, we will meet for a 3-hour session combining coaching, mentorship, and guided embodiment work. The aim is simple: to help you stay grounded, connected, and clear in the areas that matter most. This cohort is designed for founders and leaders who want to move beyond high-functioning stress, lead their business, relationships, and live in an embodied and integrated way, build a life that feels aligned rather than reactive. You'll be supported by people who understand what you carry and who can help you lead from your core instead of from pressure. If this is the kind of guidance and structure you desire, you'll find a link to join in the show notes.
That's a good question, right? And to be fair, I mean, I knew that, or just before the relationship, I knew that this is, important to me. But I also lived under the assumption that this is actually not available. So I lived under the assumption that I have a choice to be in a relationship or to be my authentic self, speaking my truth, and with everything that comes with it, right? Now I made the experience that both can be available. And that has become the foundation of our relationship. I would argue most people are not really clear. And I think there are good ways how to become very clear on what my needs are. But then also I would say it's important to come in with a certain openness and see okay, now that as this relationship is forming, what are the opportunities that open for me? What is a need that I thought I have that is where maybe something else is now met or something deeper has emerged that is now met, where maybe this surface level need is not important to me anymore, right? So yes, do the work and become clear on what do I need from a relationship and what am I bringing in, but then also coming in with an openness to see how does it transform me,
right?
What does it do to me, and then checking in are these things that I thought are so important to me, are they still there, or maybe have they changed or evolved? And how does it feel now being in that relationship and being in the dynamic?
How do you balance that out with the ones that you see as incredibly important? And how do you go about it when you observe those not getting met? I'll speak for myself. One of I pondered on this in the fact that there's so many different ways of how we can get our relational needs met, but there is a particular distinct texture that we have in a romantic relationship. And there are certain needs that we perhaps want to get met in a relationship where no one else will meet them in the same way. And one of the things that I really considered that is incredibly important for me is this certain level of ride or die devotion. A certain devotion, not necessarily to me, but towards the relationship, right? A continued willingness with an open heart to show up to any challenge. if I consider that for a moment, that I would argue is a non-negotiable for me. So how would you go about that with a certain level of openness in terms of how it might show up in relationship? Could you use that as an example, or?
What I can say is that until I discovered this and saw how it felt to me and made the experience of exactly that, I didn't know I was looking for it, to be honest. And probably this has to do with, let's say, my approach to life a bit in general. Like, I'm explorative. Like, I can become very clear around, okay, why does something not work for me? But usually I go into situations kind of like not having like total clarity around everything. It's more like an exploration. And then I'm quite sensitive if stuff is like doesn't feel right, and it's not really working. And then I get good at like understanding it, looking at the reasons, see if I can do something about it. And if not, then also like after some time leave it. I'd say in terms of like going into something, I'm usually not super well prepared. But then I adapt very quickly to the situation. Yeah. What I can say to what you just shared is that, yeah, this is definitely an experience that I'm making in my current relationship. And through that, I discovered that, oh yeah, that's actually now a non-negotiable for me.
Yep.
But I wasn't aware of that to that extent before. But when I noticed it, when I saw the opportunity, I was like, fuck, like this is big. Like, yeah. So yeah, I respond a bit to like something that I see, something that opens, opportunities that open, something I wasn't maybe aware of before, but then the moment I see it, and that's exactly how I also build companies. Like, I look at something, at the market, or I meet people and I have no idea what I'm actually looking for. And then something ignites in me when I see something, and then I go for it. And that was kind of like similar. I saw this opportunity with my current partner, and that ignited a new level of relating with each other that I didn't know was available before.
This is probably a useful reference for founders as well to hear about. And the way I as well observed, because, we were very close as well towards that time, was a certain level of openness. And I think that also goes a little bit in your philosophy, particularly your spiritual philosophy of how you approach life. So I would say let's just bookmark that for a little bit towards the end of the conversation. However, I do want to, I guess, close this thought by offering listeners this exploration of asking themselves, how would you like to do a relationship? How would you like to do conflict in relationship? How would you like to do intimacy in relationship? How would you like to communicate in relationship? What are the needs that you didn't get met perhaps in past relationships, and as a result felt incredible pain? How might you have hurt the ones that you'd loved very closely? What have they taught you about who you're being in a relationship? And how would you now like to show up differently? I think these are all explorations that can offer us a bit of an understanding. Who are perhaps some of the role models that you've seen over your lifetime that you actually value in the way that they show up in relationship? Getting curious about that. What is it about the way that they do relationship that resonates with you, that speaks to you, that moves you? I think that already can give us a bit of a frame in terms of how we want to show up. And of course, when we're then in a process of actually meeting someone, or even if we've already been in a relationship for a while, sitting down and actually having that conversation, getting curious about that, sharing that with our partners, but then also really attempting to understand them, hear them, like get their reality about how they want to do a relationship, what's important to them, and then as well how we can come together in a relationship.
Yeah. And I would add like exploring like, how much capacity do I have and how much willingness do I have to, meet someone with all their patterns and all their imprints and all their behaviors, and like, yeah, to what extent am I ready to like, form a relationship with someone where like I come with my stuff and the person comes with his or her stuff, right? I think that's an important exploration to do as well, because that is ultimately the reality of once I start forming a relationship, all these things will come into it and will meet, and then it comes down to my willingness to be with all of these things.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, one of my teachers, he speaks about it from this understanding that everyone will come with their own baggage.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to get clear on the fact, what is the baggage that we're able to take on,
Yeah.
but not just we're able to take on, that we're willingly
Yeah.
choosing to take on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to as well project or perceive that a person will not come with a certain form of baggage that we don't need to deal with relationship, that we don't need to deal with in the relationship, I think is absurd.
Yeah.
And so we want to come to a certain understanding of what is the type of baggage that I'm okay with and what am I not okay with. I think there are certain things that are quite clear for me. I don't really work with that very well, but then there's certain aspects I work actually quite well with, you
Yeah.
know, and, I come with my own baggage, right? So the other person as well needs to really assess, can they be with the baggage that I'm presenting, right?
Yeah.
And I think it is also important from that place as well to come into a recognition, I'm choosing this.
Yeah.
Because this is, I think, also a flaw that I observe in a lot of relationships. When the relationship gets formed, when they're in the honeymoon phase, when all these hormones like are kicked into the system, dopamine, vasopressin, norepinephrine, testosterone, estrogen, like all of, like we feel this emotional cocktail. It's easy to do relationship from that place, right? It's exciting to do relationship from that place. It's novel to do relationship from that place. But can we still choose that partner once that phase fades off?
Mm-hmm.
And can we willingly do that? And also recognize, hey, we chose this from the beginning. Because I think also one thing that can come up for so many individuals is they feel the high of the first few months, but then as soon as that fades away and then I guess the actual work presents itself, let's just say, a lot of individuals second guess themselves and doubt. And I think that can also cause a lot of hurt in relationships because all of a sudden we don't feel chosen.
It's just one thing. Is this high that like you were speaking about? I personally believe, no matter what, I mean, no matter it's not true, but it can constantly be recreated, independent of, let's say, most of the patterns. Yeah, just leave it there. But I just want to say it's possible to create that over and over again. It's actually not that complicated.
Which I agree with and
Yeah.
I've experienced.
And the second thing is, I would argue that the more, let's say, self-aware someone is, and let's say two super self-aware people meet, or self-awareness and authenticity. So if the authenticity level is high and self-awareness is high, there is going to be way less of a honeymoon phase, so to say. Because what is that honeymoon phase, right? This is also sometimes, or many times, it is also someone like hiding their shit, like holding it together in order to receive love. The moment they have love, like they let go of that effort, and then the person has changed, right? If I have a high level of authenticity in my expression, high level of self-awareness, I will just meet, at least that has been my experience. I will meet and it works, and there's simply no change after a few months. Sure, there are like, small things here and there that we only discover if we go like deeper together, but it's not like this like big surprise. And suddenly there's this one big trait that was like completely out of the blue suddenly sits in front of me. Like, what the fuck, where did that come from? Wasn't here for 6 months, now it's sitting in front of me. So yeah, I would say there's like a real benefit to like doing the work before on myself.
Yes.
To avoid exactly that.
And I think this is a really good jumping off point to the first let's say, pillar that I wanted to discuss with you. And like I said, I want to loosely as well take it on at least just the pillars, and then, bring our own ideas
Yeah.
into it. But, bringing in the pillars of John's understanding of how we can create sacred relationships. And you had referenced the fact that, if we do the work before that, we can, I guess, avoid the highs of the honeymoon phase, and then all of a sudden the chaos that arises as soon as that fades away. And the question that presents itself for me is, well, what is that inner work? What is that deeper work that is required? And something that I just consider is, first of all, getting clear on what is the conditioning that we've received in relationship.
Mm.
What is the imprints
Mm.
that we've received in terms of our imprints from our mothers, from our fathers? What did we learn about love? What did we learn about connection? What did we learn about attachment? And I don't know if you've ever read this book, but it had a really great influence on me in my life. Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendricks. He created a relational model, which is called imago therapy. And the theory that he had um, came from this notion that we will unconsciously attract partners into our lives with some of the best and worst traits of both of our caregivers. And the premise for that is because we want to actually come into a certain healing of those incompletions that may have arisen within the relationship. And again, it's a theory, but when I had pondered on it in my as well own relational life, I felt it was quite sound in terms of what I'd observed, and as well the traits I'd consistently seen show up in my partners. And that, as a lens, I believe, was definitely incredibly empowering for me to look at what are the wounds that I've experienced from my mom and dad, and actually learning to work with those so I then don't project them onto my partner. Because I think that is also one of the biggest challenges that occurs when we do relationships with that lack of education.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the trigger arises,
Yeah.
and we're actually not seeing our partner any longer, but we're 6 years old and we see mom in front of us, or we see dad in front of us, and then we use the same patterns that we had learned then. So I think there's more to this, but I just want to offer this perhaps just to as a jumping off point, and want to hear from you. First of all, how does this resonate with you? But also, what other elements do you see in terms of doing the deep inner work before getting into a relationship, or even in relationship?
So first of all, I agree with everything that you said. It really helps if I have that understanding, right? Because then I can see where does my stuff come from and so on. I would say there's another possible way, so to say, or solution, quote unquote, which is if I'm very, very, very self-aware and can basically catch myself before I enter any kind of trigger. And then I'm able to articulate what's happening inside of me to my partner in a calm, centered, clear way without blame and just speaking to my own experience. I do not necessarily have to have the knowledge where does stuff come from. If I have someone that, can meet me there and also has a willingness to be with me in that thing, that can also already help to heal some of that stuff. Without maybe having, and that requires then to practice to stay aware and stay centered and grounded while something is triggering me, and being able to see, oh, that's a trigger, and then articulating this, because if I don't articulate it, then I will suppress, without it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But speak to it, but without the blame, without the projection and everything, right? So that requires work to remain calm, centered, and grounded, build self-awareness, which various tools that can help us get there: breath work, meditation, also some kind of even therapy. I help understanding okay, what's happening inside of me, and then being able to speak to it. Like, that's also part of practice that would definitely help in relationship.
Beautiful and agreed. And I also want to just perhaps frame this as to have that level of self-awareness, and as well to have that capacity to catch ourselves in the moment when it happens, and as well learn how to emotionally regulate ourselves, and to say it in the most cleanest way. It, for most of us, or for many of us, it will take years of practice of doing that, right? So I also just want to humbly acknowledge that.
It totally, and like, very likely relationship is where like the deepest triggers are activated.
Yes.
So it's, I would say the strength of any practice is tested in relationship.
Yep.
All that stuff is useful in business as well.
Mm-hmm.
It and there, once again, it's the same thing.
Yep.
Like, can I pull that off in a moment of intensity when my company is, in a difficult situation? Can I pull that off in an important negotiation that I might have to go through to save the company? Can I pull that off when I'm projecting my deepest mother wound on my partner? That's where it gets tested, right? But that where it makes a difference, because like, these are the situations where like, it pays off to
Yeah.
to remain grounded and centered. Like, there's a real life benefit. And if I can pull that off in my board meeting, I can also pull it off in the evening at home with my partner.
I think that's a really interesting point that you're making, and I love looking at where have we acquired certain skills in one field that we can then, the principles at least, how that we can then translate over to another field,
Yeah.
because it makes us realize once we've done that we actually already know the practice,
Yeah.
but we just need to translate it elsewhere, right? So I think I love that as a frame, and I think it will also be relieving for a lot of individuals who can maintain themselves very well under stress in a more business context, and start looking at how they can apply some of the same tools that they're probably already using unconsciously, maybe
Yeah.
in business,
Yeah.
in the relational field.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just ask themselves. And I also want to just premise the fact that having an understanding of the triggers that arise in relationship and why they trigger us so much, and what that triggers in us as a consequence of the needs that we didn't get met in childhood, but also how we got wounded, it helps.
Yeah. Totally.
The awareness of it helps. It can prepare us. I mean,
Yeah.
that I would say was my starting point, to work with that awareness first. And I think the more I got into a deeper understanding of it, the more my lens was clearer when I was showing up in a relationship. I would notice myself starting to act out, and I would watch myself mid-sentence and realize this has nothing to do with my partner.
Yeah.
This has everything to do with my dad right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is just kind of like a useful way to go about it. But yeah, I definitely want to go back to these ideas of self-awareness, and as well emotional regulation. I'll use those as references, and want to explore those further in the third pillar, which is all around nervous system regulation, but also devotion to our partners in the heat of the moment. Another thing that came up for me, and to be honest with you, I'm a little bit cautious around bringing it up, but I think it's still useful. The reason why I feel a little bit cautious about it, because I observe so many individuals weaponizing these understandings, but it is around having an understanding of our attachment imprints. Having an understanding of, in the heat of the moment, when our nervous system gets activated and we're not in a regulated state where we're socially engaged with the other individual, and we act out, whether it's in fight, flight, fawn, freeze, I think it's good for us to know, what is our response to that? How do we show up in relationship? And what is it that we require in those moments? And I think a lot of individuals, the reason why I'm so cautious about those teachings is because individuals seem to form identities around these. I'm an avoidant attachment style. I'm an anxious attachment style. I would also acknowledge that all the patterns can actually show up in a relationship. There's going to be certain moments where I can be quite avoidant, but there's also other moments where I can be quite anxious in relationship. It really depends as well on the flavor of the challenge that's occurring in relationship. And I believe it's just useful to notice when they arise, but also what we really require in those moments.
I mean, I have to admit that I'm not very well educated in these.
Yeah.
And happy for you to like go deeper into it. And I would have a curiosity, which is there actually, and that maybe like I have feel a bit of a resistance with these things.
Interesting.
And I think that resistance
What
is
is that
coming
resistance
from,
about?
so I just like I heard people speak about it, right? And I maybe like, and I never read a book about it, so I'm not really well educated, right? But like whenever I heard people speak about it, I was like, okay, but where's now like a healthy attachment style? Like is it all negative in a certain way? It's avoidant, or is that like it's always used in kind of like a negative context, some way? And I was like, but why would I say that I am that when it's negative? It's good to realize it and then like let it go. It's not serving.
I see.
I am that, and that's why I live relationship that way. It's just like doesn't make sense to me. Do you know what I mean?
I see what you mean, and this is also where I was a little bit cautious around bringing it in. But I'm gonna argue why I found it to be useful. First of all, I don't believe it's useful to create identities out of this, but I think it is useful to have an understanding of the nervous system response that can show up in a relationship. Oh, when things feel too threatening, I feel like I need space. Yeah, because relationship feels threatening in that moment. How do I engage with that in the moment that happens? Some individuals really need that. But the question is, how can we do that in a more skillful or eloquent way that doesn't create ruptures in relationship? I would say a lot of individuals unconsciously take space. And then when they take space, that activates the abandonment mood for so many individuals who might tend more towards the anxious side. And so to have an understanding of what we require in the heat of the moment in conflict, but also be conscious about it, of how we navigate it. So as an example, if you notice, I feel like overwhelmed right now, I feel smothered right now, to actually be in connection right now feels incredibly unsafe for me. And I have a sense that we're just going to create more rupture if we're going to stay in this dynamic. I would actually say it can be super powerful in that moment to create a clear container with your partner and communicate, hey, listen, I notice myself getting completely overwhelmed right now. I'm freezing up. I notice I'm not really able to communicate with you in this moment. I would love to take 30 minutes. I would like to just create some space for myself, just to be with myself, to come back into a sense of calmness. And in 30 minutes, I will come back and we'll re-engage with you.
Totally.
Yeah. So this is the reason why I bring it up, because these nervous system responses, they will come up in a relationship. And I would say this is also a place where some of the biggest ruptures can occur, when these nervous system responses kick in. And, we'll bounce back and forth between both of them. But then the question is, how can we work with them deliberately, not in a way that is actually hurtful or creates deeper loss of trust in relationship?
I'm definitely, how do you say that? So there was avoidance, and what was the other one?
Anxious. Yeah, and there's of course a secure attachment.
In order for me to go through conflict, I need connection. If there is no connection, then I kind of like I'm not really willing to go through conflict. It doesn't feel safe to me. The moment there is connection and it feels safe, I'm ready to work through whatever shit is there. But the moment the connection is lost, I'm like, that doesn't feel safe then to me.
And what is your tendency in those moments when that happens?
So in my current relationships, this doesn't happen.
Sure.
But I'm going to come to that in the later chapters of the podcast. But my current relationship, that doesn't happen because like we establish connection first and then resolve things. In the past, it would lead to me basically shutting down, overwhelm, unwillingness to look at what is there.
Simply disconnecting from the dynamic.
Yeah, I would say disconnecting from the dynamic and also not really like, or needing a lot of time to actually look at, okay, what was my role in that, and spending a lot of time in their praxis.
When you say that you need connection in order to engage in tension or conflict, how would you describe that for a listener who might have a sense of what you're speaking about, but maybe are not fully following you in this moment?
So, okay, I start with the first thing. The first thing is meeting in a regulated state. So grounded, clear, calm, centered. That's one thing. Definitely, like I definitely prefer, let's say, physical being in a room, like being in one room together. So like the nervous systems can at least communicate with each other. Over, let's say, speaking over phone.
Yeah.
I do not need touch or anything. But feeling the other person, being there is very important. But it's mainly the regulated state. That's what signals safety to me. Whereas a, let's say, not regulated state, like big expression of something, that I can hold that, but then I'm holding that now post, which is different. This is not conflict resolution. This is, let's hold it, wait for the storm to calm down, and then solve it. But for me to resolve conflict, I need safety, and safety comes from a kind of, let's say, balanced state, so to say.
And what stands out as well for me and what you had just said is the clarity that you have, and that I believe as well will be incredibly supportive in those moments when it arises.
Yeah, I would actually add something that's really important. I need to feel that there is a willingness to understand what has happened inside of me without blame. Because then I feel like, okay, now we are together up against my bullshit and my patterns and my fears and whatever, rather than I have to explain myself.
Yeah.
And that's a moment where everything changes. And then I open up and I then admit all my shit that is there. Then someone has a willingness to say, yeah, this and that is difficult for me, and I'm here with you trying to understand what happens inside of you that then maybe even hurt me. That is what feels ultimately safe. And then I can go, as deep as we like into my fucked up psyche and understand what has happened there.
Maybe a few more pointers that I want to bring in just to complete this pillar. But one of the difficulties as well that I observe is when we're attempting to get certain needs met from our partners, that we're unwilling to meet ourselves, and how that can at times as well create this dependency onto the other partner. And that is not to say that there is going to be certain qualities that our partners might be a little bit more adept in. As an example, like playfulness and lightness, I generally observe that like my past romantic partners are a lot more skillful at that, are a lot more experienced and embodied in that. And I perceive it as an incredible enrichment in partnership to have that. But if I don't know that quality in myself, if I'm not able to practice it and embody it in myself, I recognize that can create quite a bit of dependency, but also a certain level of fragility in the relationship, because in those moments when there might be a vacancy of that, or it might not be present, there might be this subtle demand that all of a sudden arises from my side from that, which usually creates a bit of a repelling effect from at least what I've observed. Usually that can as well occur with sex. And I think that's kind of like a big one that I observe with a lot of individuals. So I think it's also important for us to acknowledge what are the places where we're demanding our partners to meet our needs, where we're not as well exploring them from a level of self-agency, because I think that is also a place where we can absolutely get empowered in recognizing what are the aspects of myself that I'm not fully embodied in, and how can I seek to as well integrate them more fully in my relationship so they can occur in the dynamic from a more free place.
I agree to that. And I would argue that there are certain experiences that are only possible with a partner.
That's true. Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is like, while all of that is true, I think it's also important to acknowledge like, okay, what is it in terms of life experience that is available to me only through a partner? Unless I want to like go down like this fucking spiritual path in a way where I discover all the nice meditation and then I use whatever kundalini for this and then stillness for that and like, you know, and then become like this being that can just rest in a cave and be happy all day.
Yeah.
So unless we want to go there, I would say it's very human to say these series of life experiences, and for one is maybe like feeling calm and at home, and for the other one it's like expression of joy that becomes available through a partner. And yes, that creates a dependency. And if I can see it for what it is, and not then command my partner to be different to how he or she is in a certain moment, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been certainly for a bit of a time in the trap of like, oh yeah, I just need to, I don't know, feel all my fucking sexual energy so that I don't need my partner to handle that, or I need to become that like super joyous, expressive being that. So and truth is, I am usually very kind of like calm, laid back, relaxed, grounded, and sometimes a bit too serious. And now I went to all the fucking ecstatic dance and whatever else, and I can enjoy it, but truth is like my partner can bring me to a level of joy that is unmet. And yes, I had peak experiences of joy in like meditation retreats, but yeah, honestly, like just also acknowledging that, and then also doing the work on ourselves, and also like say then having acceptance that okay, maybe I can't access this peak experience right now. I can't access it because it's not available for my partner right now because she's going through something and can't access joy. Being okay with that is a training from my point of view, but also accepting and acknowledging that yes, she in a relationship that can take me to levels in certain areas of life I simply can't get to just by myself.
100%. It's not this or that. It's a yes and what you're also pointing towards is the richness of romantic relationship. Why it's so meaningful.
Yeah.
Why it's so fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be aspects that we can't meet otherwise, right? And this is also why this topic is so meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the second pillar, which is this understanding of intimacy. And there's a lot of understandings around this idea of intimacy. I think a lot of people equate it to sexual intimacy, and this is not what I'm referring to here. I'm exploring it more from this idea of closeness. And one of the definitions that I really love is this understanding that intimacy is to see what is there to be seen and to feel what is there to be felt. Another way to look at it is from this understanding of attunement, this understanding of, I think Thomas Huber said this, but attunement is this understanding of I feel you feeling me, and you feel me feeling you. And I think these are some good conceptual frames to bring an understanding to this idea of intimacy. And I think if I just look at you, I would actually argue this is probably where you're very much masterful at. This ability to be authentic in relationship, to bring your full radical self in relationship, to be honest, to be vulnerable. And the level of intimacy that I've seen you as well create with that has definitely been profound and has created like a very rich impact as well on me.
Thank you.
For the listeners who might be listening into this, I'm curious, what might they be able to learn about your understandings of intimacy and how to actually create that rich closeness that they might be longing for?
To me, a lot of that is driven by my desire for freedom. I have a history of exploring all sorts of way of finding freedom through finances didn't work, finding freedom through meditation didn't work. I mean, it works to a certain extent, but can be totally different podcast. But finding freedom in the human experience is something that, is really driving me. And I discovered that the biggest level of freedom is when I'm witnessed in whatever I am in a certain moment, and I'm also expressing it.
Yeah.
And it's not only being witnessed in it, but even being held, seen, and loved in it. That is for me, and that is ultimately healing this wound that I also carry, the like authenticity versus attachment.
Yeah.
So if I'm my authentic self, I will lose love and connection.
Yeah.
So I choose to, adapt in all sorts of ways to make sure love and connection is there. And this is for me the peak human experience of freedom is I get to be fully myself. And this this phrase like I am myself is many times misinterpreted of like I demonstrate all sorts of behaviors that are hurtful and whatsoever, and then my partner just has to tolerate that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is revealing the deepest hidden aspects of myself that are super vulnerable. And I sometimes don't want to look at, and I wish for them not to be there. Problem is they are there. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
A recent example was I was terrified to lose passion and joy, and my partner had opened me to an experience of joy and passion that I hadn't known before. And we went through a very, very, very intense experience over the past weeks where both of us were very energy depleted at the end of every fucking day. Plus I got sick and it was just challenging. And I noticed how I was so terrified to lose that. And I noticed how that fear of losing that basically made me be kind of blocked and cut off a bit. And I needed to reveal that and speak to that. And now there were so many stories around, is this needy? Is that unattractive? Am I weak with that? Am I losing my masculine pose, which is like, I'm holding it. All that stuff came up. And then the liberation of like speaking to that and saying, hey, look, the past weeks have been different to what my system is used to. And I'm terrified of losing that beautiful thing that we had over the past month.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a liberation through like
Beautiful.
speaking to a certain truth that is there. And sometimes it's something deep like that. Sometimes it's something less deep. What I want to say is, for me, I have kind of like developed a practice which is really speaking to what is happening inside of me. I can even go and say, if you do that, that's how I feel. But that is, when I say that, it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It's just what you did, and you do you, and you haven't hurt me or whatever. It's just what I notice in my system when you do that. Now let's look at that and let's see what it actually is. And then maybe we can heal that together. And it is the commitment to do healing work together, to acknowledge that I don't like the word, but I don't get like, to acknowledge that in a certain way, while spiritual teachings say we are not broken, in a certain way we are broken. And then using a romantic relationship to put us together again, while also exploring, spirituality whatsoever. But doing the healing work together, it requires an acceptance of we are not fully healed, perfect humans. We have stuff that we bring in, and then I have someone that is willing to go to the deepest places together with me and help me see things that I can't see just alone. And that goes against at least my conditioning around what is attractive. How do I have to show up? How do I have to be? Right? It's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's the complete opposite of that. And that's what I consider like true intimacy. And And again, I did not know that this was what I was looking for. And then I fell into it, and I'm realizing, yeah, that's how I want to live fully, and I'm deeply committed to that. And it has a spillover into how I'm relating with people outside of my romantic relationship, like with friends or even business partners.
First of all, I love everything that you said, and I stand behind everything that you said. And it's also my way of the way that I want to do a relationship. And also just acknowledging how hard it can be. But yeah, one of the things that stood out for me when you had said the fact that in some capacity we might not be broken or whole, but also to another we are broken.
Yeah.
And it actually references exactly what I discussed with an individual called Joshua Wenner, and he studied grief for, I believe, a decade, and he created a documentary called The Gift of Grief. And one of the individuals that he had interviewed had said exactly that. On a one level, we're completely and entirely whole, and on another level, we're broken.
Yeah.
And I think, especially on a human level, there is something to acknowledge about that, and it can be super profound. To acknowledge the fact that we get hurt in relationship, we get wounded in relationship, and this is also where we can experience healing. And I want to acknowledge, if I look at my life and I look at some of the moments that were most impactful for me, so many were in relationship, in closeness. And it was when deep fears that I experienced my entire life all of a sudden would get alchemized, because, to your point, I would get witnessed in the aspects of myself that I'd reference as disgusting, ugly, the unattractive, that I don't want to be seen. And it is arguably one of the most courageous steps that we can take, and also one of the most healing, when we're willing to show ourselves fully. This is also me.
Yeah.
This is where I'm scared. This is where my dreams got broken in the past. These are the hopes that I had that never got fulfilled. And this is what I deeply long for. Yeah. And to really be seen in that in a relationship, and to actually be met by someone who can hold all that or be with you in that. It's profound. Something that came up for me on that point, and then I want to check in with you if there's anything else on this idea of creating intimacy, and perhaps we can offer a practice that might be useful as well for listeners to start exploring. Something that I'd considered is that so many individuals, and I include myself in that, and that was a big one for me, I actually relate less to the person in front of me. But so often I'd relate from my stories about the person, or for who I believe the person to be. And that gets, I'm going to say, quite challenging when we've experienced certain difficulties with someone or had ruptures, and then we create certain identities around this person.
Yeah.
This person is this way, this person is that way. And I observe that the more our image of this person gets clouded through these identities that we form, this person is selfish, or this person is greedy, or this person is like this, the more separate, the more distant we actually feel. So I've as well come across the fact that it's so important as well to check ourselves on these assumptions, on these judgments that we have, and to look at the underlying hurt that might be present there, and actually honoring that in ourselves, and perhaps as well bringing it in relationship to find repair, so we absolve ourselves from actually continuing to look through those lenses. Because I think that is also a really big difficulty that can show up for partners in relationship, particularly more in long-term relating. So yeah, that's another point that I see that can just be a barrier in connecting.
100%. And I quickly take the conversation into business for just a few moments, because
Please.
it fits very well. this is a totally underestimated, underrated, most people not know about skill that I believe can be a real superpower as a founder. If I have the ability to let go of the stories I have about my people and at least whatever every once a week gives them the experience of like just being with them and meeting them on the most human level and most open level that they're able to like show up at work and relate from that place rather than for all my assumptions I have around them. I would argue that this experience in the long run is equally, if not more important than, money and other benefits. And it's a real opportunity that I, as a founder, have because I have a lot of control over the environment that I create, and I have control over the way I relate with my people. And if I can bring that, that's a real superpower. And it will make a massive difference. And it's actually how I am trying, without saying that I'm always there, but I'm really trying to relate from that place with the people that I work with closely.
Yep.
And it creates a level of depth and connection where business really turns into friendship and not like some surface level kind of like, but like a deep, deep, deep friendship. And I just wanted to bring that in here because business is a lot about holding and having a lot of relationships. And the challenge is that as founders, we are constantly evaluating our team to assess, okay, is everything going the right direction? Does someone need to develop? So there's a high risk of stop seeing the human being. But if I actively practice that and bring it in again and again, I'm 100% sure that that person will, in a more healthy way, even develop a deeper sense of loyalty and bring a stronger performance and access their heart while they operate for my business. And there's a part of me that also has some hope for, like, founders to create environments that operate more from such a place. And there, once again, it is my approach to relationship in romantic relating is my approach to relationship in business. Different level of depth, but very similar approach.
Agreed. And I just want to as well acknowledge this idea or this pillar of intimacy is not solely reliant on relational intimacy or romantic intimacy. Like these are principles that we can absolutely bring in any form of relationship, and of course you can choose how far you want to go with that. But like, for example, with close friends such as yourself, I want to as well experience that. And for me, intimacy is really about this understanding of absolving any form of separation that might be there between the two of us, and being able to see each other, being able to feel each other, being able to recognize the humanness in each other and the way that we're the same. Right? Whether it's in our fears, our hurts, our desires, our yearnings, or the things that move us. And really getting the other person and just being with the other person. It's actually a very somatic practice, and I would say.
Totally. And a lot is like just allowing someone to be that what they are in a moment and having the experience that they have without saying this experience is wrong. The experience is what the experience is. If that is an emotion that is felt in that moment, it is what it is. Then later on we can speak about that. But in that moment is allowing the space for that, for whatever it is that I am in a moment to just witness that and be with that.
I think that transitions us really well into the third pillar, which is all around this conversation around devotion to love or each other's nervous systems, particularly in the heat of the moment, when conflict arises, when tension arises, when things get heated. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some insights that you discovered over the years around how to navigate that, particularly in a more romantic setting, when, let's say, there is a conflict that arises around, a particular understanding or something that happened, and how do you usually approach that, and what would you as well encourage the listeners in this conversation?
First and most important to me is to, before let's say speaking about the behavior of the other person, speaking about my own experience, what I have experienced, because that is the truth. Like it's always, I always try to start with the truth. And the truth about what my partner did is through my lens. But it's hard, and we can then agree on something, then we create truth, but it's not true. At the very beginning, it's my projection, it's my assumption, I don't know what it really is. So then we can have a conversation, agree on something, then we create truth together. But unless we do that, it's until that point, it's not true. So I can start with truth. Truth is my experience. This is just what I experienced inside of my system, and bringing that, allowing space for the other person to also bring their experience in their system. So this is two objective truth that can be shared. None of these is right or wrong. It's just what it is. And there's no point in like debating that, oh, you shouldn't have felt that and blah, blah, blah. It's not the point. Stating the truth. Step 2 can then be to, use these two truths to then create a shared truth around what is it that actually happened here.
Yes.
So that's like in terms of like how I would approach it from like a cognitive level. That's how I like to go about it. Second thing is really do my very best to come back to ground and center before I engage in conversation. And then what that does is it allows me to bring whatever it is that moved inside of me, whatever that truth was, in a contained way. And not like, super emotional and just like, dumping it on my partner, basically. So if it's something that needs to be felt because it is big, then also allow for the emotion to be expressed. But even let's say there's anger, allow the anger to be expressed, but not bring it towards my partner. Find a way to express my anger, come back. Then I can share, that made me really angry. And that will also help me to, and then if my partner can see that, it will help me to heal that, so to say. But I don't think it's healthy to pour out my anger.
Yeah.
Especially, and now it comes back to like nervous system and being attuned. Let's just assume like the dynamic as like me as a man and then my partner being a woman. I'm physically 2x of her. If I just, share my anger expressively, it's a fucking threat for her and her nervous system. It's actually dangerous. So how would I suppose her to like stay calm and centered and hold it when I'm like super fucking angry? I wouldn't do that. What then can happen later, but there's a side note, I can ask for consent to bring a certain emotion and go through a process. That's a full different story. But in the heat of the moment, it's more about, not bringing something that is a threat for her. And then as another framework, I would, and that's definitely something where I'm clearly learning from my partner, accessing the part of me that truly wants to understand. First of all, truly wants her best and truly wants to understand what has happened for her in her system. And really asking questions from that place of curiosity, rather a triggered place of, oh, you did that, now I feel this way. So these are kind of like practices and approaches that I choose.
Yes.
Always checking in, like if I want to share something, always checking in first, say, do you have capacity to listen to something?
Yeah.
Also saying around like, I have clarity of what I'm going to share, or I have actually no idea, but there's something here. Do you have capacity to help me process it? But I know exactly what it is. So we don't know where this will go. So the check-in is usually pretty good to make sure like the other person actually wants that right
create
now.
A container for it.
Exactly. And then really just speaking to what is, if I feel, and that's I'm making that learning over and over again, and like same with my partner, we're both learning that, and every time we recognize it, we have to laugh at it. But the moment something feels off or someone feels disconnected, or we both feel disconnected, just say it. Just say it. Think, hey, I feel disconnected. We don't know why. It's just here. So now let's look at it. Where did we lose connection? What happened? What is it? And we figure it out together. And what that does is it's so important. By speaking that and then being curious, it's no longer, oh shit, I feel disconnected, she did that, what is wrong here? It's like there's a disconnection and the two of us are up against the disconnection to fix it. Totally different than saying, I feel disconnected because you did that. That's a conflict. I can say, I feel disconnected. Okay, let's join forces to find connection again.
Dude, I love this so much, especially that last point. I mean, it touches me very deeply because the way that you're framing it for all the people that are listening in is exploring this idea of quote unquote conflict from this idea of we're on the same side
Yeah.
against the problem
Yeah.
or against the challenge that's in front of us.
Yeah.
We're not an adversarial relationship where our needs are not getting met and you're the perpetrator now, I'm the victim, and someone needs to save us, right?
Yeah.
It's really, we're on the same side here. Something is going on. Let's explore this together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it actually just touches me when I think about it. And also, I consider the fact that so much of the challenges that are showing up in relationship, I think one of the biggest difficulties is that we withhold them.
Yeah.
We don't bring them up. We don't share them. We don't reveal them out of fear that they might create bigger rupture if we do. But then that leads to them accumulating over time.
Yeah.
Which leads to actual conflicts, actual tensions, actual outbreaks.
Yeah, 100%.
And maybe another thing that I might just as well want to add, and then maybe we as well move on to the last one that I wanted to address, is this idea that when conflict comes up or when something comes up that has a certain type of response in us, ensuring that we clear that very quickly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't actually lead to resentment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually lead to psychological stories about our partners, about who they are and like their character and all these things. You know, ideally, I would say clearing it at the latest 48 hours, but I would say like doing it even in 24 hours if we can.
Yeah, I have that in my partnership. We have like a no backlog commitment. So I can even, sometimes I say, hey, since we have a no backlog commitment, I need to mention something just for this backlog not to build. And it might sound small and unnecessary, but it's backlog, so we need to clear it. Even if it's like super small, it just needs to be cleared from time to time. Super important. And yeah, man, I think one important point that I want to mention here is I like to assume that let's say you're two partners and we both want to feel love and connection. And now our minds produce something that gets in the way of it. And there's a choice that we can choose there. We can either choose to blame the other person for what their mind produced, or we can say, the mind produced that. But let's just look at it. It would be much easier if the mind wouldn't have done that, right? So if I now look at it, it's actually not my fault or my responsibility. Like the mind produced that thought that then triggered an emotion that then created disconnection. But if I had a choice, I wouldn't have had that fucking thought because it just created a problem that I don't want to have. And if you just assume that for a moment, then it's actually very easy to say, both of us want to feel love and connection. Now the mind has, one of the minds or both minds have fucked up love and connection. Okay, let's fix it again because that's what we really want. But I believe, like, as long as we assume that every thought that occurs in the other person is their fault, it's going to be only problems.
Yep.
Right? So if you just assume a certain randomness in thoughts, then we have a chance to be up against that thoughts with these emotions, with that whatever result is, to heal it together or fix it together, right?
I love that.
And that's what I want. And that's the ultimate freedom for me, because I realized at some point my mind is broken and fucked up. It produces thoughts that I'm not very proud of. And sometimes the thought even leads to something. And the ability to speak to that and say, this is here. I'm not taking it super seriously. I'm not doing anything with it, but it is here, is the freedom that I'm looking for. And that's what I'm finding in my current relationship. And that's so liberating.
I really enjoy that. And this is also where probably the way that you approach relationship extends over to the more spiritual realms.
Yeah.
With the recognition that a lot of these thoughts The difficulty arises when we get too attached to these thoughts with this notion that we are them or we're the ones having them versus actually inquiring, like bringing them more from a curious place, such as it's not my mind, it's the mind that created that.
100%. 100%. I mean, just think about it. Life would be much easier if you had complete control over your thoughts, because certain thoughts you just would not have.
Sure.
Problem is, here they are.
Yeah.
Right?
For the sake of time, let's explore this final pillar, which is this idea of polarity. And I think it's an important one to explore because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings can occur. And what I always found so interesting was the antagonistic tension that can occur between intimacy and polarity. Perhaps you have different thoughts on that, but the intimacy thrives on sameness, whereas desire thrives on distance. It thrives on differences. And so this is also where I see a little bit of the cosmic joke occurring in my eyes, where some of the most erotic moments that I've personally experienced were in those moments when, I felt not so much distant from my partner, but physically distant. I was just like, I want them, but they're not here, kind of thing. But also when I noticed that she was very amplified in a certain type of experience, one could argue maybe in her feminine expression or being energy, or in more her yin energy or her flow energy. Whereas I was more amplified in my go energy or doing energy or masculine, yang, whatever you want to reference it. Right? And the more I see us being able to amplify those opposing poles, the more that can create a certain level of attraction. And, this is also where I really believe what you had referenced when we began the conversation, that those honeymoon moments that we just naturally experience as a result of the hormones that kick in when we meet someone, where all this novelty occurs, we can actually deliberately create these moments when we understand some principles around how to create deep, polarizing sexual moments.
Yeah, I agree to everything that you said. And I want to add something. Clearly, there is, let's say, a level of polarity created through physical distance, different, let's say, energy archetypes that are accessible, and all of that. 100% agree. And there's and it's just my experience, but I don't know if that's true for other individuals as well. There is a level of, and I don't even know if I want to call that polarity, but definitely level of attraction and wanting to be physical, intimate for a long time, and that comes from sameness, and that, at least in my experience, is evoked when there's truth. And for me, it's somehow, I would just say it's another flavor. So there's these flavors of like polarity, physical distance. It leads to like, I want her, she's more in energy, I'm more in my yang, she's more in her yin, and there's the arc and all of that. So that's, let's say, one area, and I can explore that, and there are great techniques and tools how to explore that, even without physical distance. And then there's another that's equally beautiful, that can be accessed through basically what I've been sharing before. These moments when like I was met on these very deep levels, when there was truth, when there is we against the mind, that creates a level, and it's massive turn on our relationship. I would actually argue it is the number one turn on that we have. It's even like, oh, there's this connection. We find the truth, and the truth is a massive turn on. So I would just argue that is another gateway into some kind of attraction, that without saying it's better or worse than the other one, it's just something that can be explored. And ideally, we just explore both.
It's beautiful. And I think something that I might just want to add, because I know that this is an ongoing challenge for a lot of individuals, especially when it comes to relating or relationship, is we are primed towards living busy lives.
Yeah.
And both individuals are actually primed towards being in consistent go mode
Yeah.
and doing mode.
Yeah.
And also, it seems like, especially when people are working together or living together, perhaps they're even working from home, it seems like everything gets really quite enmeshed, and there is no clear separations or closings or endings to the experiences that we're having. And I noticed that over time can actually deflate a lot of the sexual attraction,
Yeah.
but also the desire that we feel for our partners.
Yeah.
And so something that I also just really want to encourage individuals into is when we want to create those deep moments of connection, especially for sexual intimacy, ensuring that we have deliberate moments where we come out of that go mode or do mode and actually deliberately go into connection mode and perhaps even create distance between our partner and do the thing that we require in order to be in our center again, and then come back together. And there's also this understanding around, especially coming from the BDSM world, this understanding around creating scene play.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that as an understanding because it's super intentional in terms of this is our opening, this is our ending, and then within this container, these are the things that we're going to explore. And I like that as a frame, just to offer that as well. Anyone who's listening in, to look at how can you, let's say, create a dating scene
Mm-hmm.
where you come together and you, before you even come together, you ask each other, what would you like to experience? What would you like to feel within that experience? Maybe you want to even do some form of role play around it, bring some play, bring some laughter, bring some like youth into the dynamic. What is a way that you would love to be met sexually? What is a yearning that you might have in that? And then having a deliberate closing after that and having a conversation around that. What is something that deeply moved you? What is something that you would have wanted more of? And having genuine conversations around that. I think a game changer that really changed for me is to have genuine conversations around sex.
Yeah.
And wanting to as well understand my partner, wanting to understand her turn on.
Yeah.
And not project my turn on onto her.
Yeah.
Generally, like most individuals are going to have different ways of being erotically turned on. I would recommend anyone listening in here to explore the erotic blueprint. I found it to be a really valuable resource for myself, but it gave me a lot of awareness towards how I get most turned on sexually.
Mm.
And so when we have an understanding of that, we can then be more communicative to our partners about what it is that we're wanting, what it is that we're needing for sexual play. But then also we set our partners up for success because then they can as well meet that in those ways, right? So those are maybe just some of the thoughts that I wanted to bring in terms of sexual play. All right, man. I have a sense that there's so much more we could have gone into. I feel like this could have been like a Joe Rogan type of experience of exploring relationships for 4 hours. I really hope the listeners got a lot of value from this conversation. And I would just consider that the pillars itself, if you just explore them in your life and look at what is your relationship to these individual pillars, but also where are your hangups and what are the things that you're wanting and how do I get there? Like if you just inquire into that and meditate on that and introspect on that, I think that itself can be already incredibly powerful.
Oui.
As a closing exploration or as a closing question, before we went into this conversation, you had asked me if I was willing to read a book that has deeply impacted you, which is this book right in front of me, Stephen and Andrea Levine, Embracing the Beloved. I read it. It had an incredible impact on me. And I guess I just want to hear from you. First of all, why do you believe this book is such an incredible blueprint towards how to do a relationship? And maybe in a 2 to 3 minutes, what might the listeners receive from such a book, and as well the understandings that you have gained in terms of how to do relationship well?
So everything I've shared about how I experienced in relationship recently is, very much based in that book. My partner read it, I read it, and I would say it came very natural to us to relate in that way, and at the same time there was deep inspiration in that book. The main takeaway for me, and what was so like, I would actually say it's life-changing, and that is really the foundation of this way of relating with each other, is having mercy with our thoughts, and stop thinking that certain thoughts shouldn't be there, which creates exactly that idea of like, it is not my mind and her mind, and then these two minds have a fight. It's the mind, and we together work with the mind to remain in love and connection. And that is what the book did to me. As like, I read that and I had this experience of like, yeah, holy shit, like, I'm thinking a thought and then I'm thinking I shouldn't be thinking that thought, and I'm feeling bad because I thought a thought that I'm actually not responsible for, that it occurred. And I was like, how fucked up is that? And since then, and I'm not saying that I can pull it off in any situation, but many times I'm like, that thought is here and that thought is causing that emotion. And I didn't choose it. I can still choose to work with it.
Yep.
But it feels less heavy, it feels less serious, it feels less intense, and that creates a space in which, and if I then have the same level of mercy for the thoughts and stuff that my partner has, because she also has the mind that just produces fucked up shit every day, like every fucking split second there's something coming up, and like, what the fuck, that creates this foundation and that basis on which we can, help each other become more whole, return home, or whatever you want to call that. And that is what turns relationship, from my point of view, into a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that can be applied to almost all areas of life. It can be applied to friendship. And what I want is, I want friends in my life that, I think he's also in the book, he's writing about like wearing that hat that broadcasts every thought that we have to the public. I want people in my life where I could wear that hat and I would say, oh yeah, that thought is really fucked up and I'm still here, And that's what I try to practice in relationship, and that's what I try to practice in friendship. And that's what I want. I do not want these relationships where I'm like, if you knew what I was thinking, you would leave immediately.
Yeah.
I want people in my life that, if you knew what I'm thinking right now, you might have a little process with it, but you would still be here, because you can see that whatever it is that causes all these like thoughts and emotions, I'm not really choosing them. However, I choose then what I do with them, how I react to them, what I bring to you, right? That's in my control. But the initial occurrence of the thought is beyond my control. And that's what I learned from the book. Yeah.
Dude, I love that, man. And retroactively, it's actually hitting me quite hard as well around the potency of that teaching and the understanding. So I will as well definitely take that out of this conversation and just meditate on it a little bit. But yeah, man, for sake of time, I just want to complete this conversation and just say thank you, because I think that was a really rich conversation. I really hope as well you listeners got a lot of value out of this. Make sure as well to check out the other conversations of this series, because I really feel that they beautifully add to everything that we had explored in this subject matter of a relationship. And if you as well feel that another founder could really benefit from this conversation, make sure as well to pay it forward. And until next time, signing off. Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, Make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and until next time, signing off.